All right. We made it. We're live. Now I'll just check it. I'm trying this live here. I'm with Rex Montague-Bauer. We're going to give an official opening. Welcome to the O Coalition. And if everything's working, we should be live here, Rex. Um,
Cool.
because this is the first time I've had a guest on a live. I don't know if there's something that I'm supposed to do on YouTube differently, but you know, we're playing a little bit today. But we've got a really hot topic. I think this could be really interesting. So whether we get anybody watching us live or whether people just watch it on the replay, I think you'll really enjoy it. So we are here because we have a set of teachings that are gold that we have an opportunity to practice and live, and I'm so thankful for them because it is the core of why I'm healthy today. After building and selling a company and going through my own journey of health and challenges, I prayed and I said, God, if there's a way to heal this, show me the way. And I was led to these teachings in a very deliberate way. And we're going to talk about one of those teachings today. And it's the first of what we call 10 Beatitudes. Some, if you, depending on the Bible and how you categorize them, there could be 8 or 10. But I like 10 because it breaks up naturally for me. And they work together. You can't actually effectively do the second one without the first. You can't do the third one without the first two. And the fourth one says, keep repeating the first three, and you're going to start to purify inside. And as you purify inside, you're going to be led toward your purpose. You're going to see the amazing awe that is available in our lives restored. And ultimately, it leads to fulfillment and happiness and well-being. So there's many promises from these Beatitudes. But this first one is a special one. And when you and I were talking, Rex and I have known each other for years, and we're good friends, and we've been teaching together and all kinds of stuff. But when you and I were talking about this, we talked about the breath. We talked about Ruka and how important that was in Beatitude 1. But why don't you give kind of a framing of how we were setting that up yesterday?
Well, I think fundamental in understanding is that there's something that keeps us alive, and it's a force. It's an elemental force, and it's an energy that is of the Creator, of God. And in the scriptures, when the ancient Aramaic was interpreted, it helped us understand better what that force is. And it's called Ruka Dakucha. And in the interpretation process, it's one of those words that has no definition. No words can explain it in the English language directly. So then it was maintained in its original form as Ruka Dakucha anytime it's been used. And so what it actually means, as I understand it, is a feminine elemental force that undoes the errors of our thinking and teaches us the truth and maintains the integrity of the body we live in. It's the very essence of the connection between the physical and the non-physical. And so would be God and human beings. And so what we are given the gift of, it's been interpreted as the Holy Spirit, just to be clear. But I always like to say when I'm talking about it is if you when you're reading the scriptures, anytime you see the Holy Spirit, put in the holy breath and see if it has a different meaning for you. And what it does is it enriches our understanding of how important it is to live and to live joyously and to live in alignment with the source. That's how we do it. And what we're doing is we're talking about it. And when used in conscious relationship, we actually create a scenario that unfolds in our bodies that's healing. It's designed for healing and also to help us understand the scriptures and what they really mean and the truth and what is life really about. And it's really essential for all of that understanding.
Well, and one of the things that we're doing on this channel is we're praying together. And with that as context, one of the first elements when I go into prayer is I make my home in the breath and recognize that if I've got tension in my body, the first thing to do is to take a few nice deep breaths, to close my eyes, to allow for my system to kind of come down a little bit from whatever it was that I had placed my attention on, and redirect my attention, frankly, back to our Creator, and allow for that wisdom that exists, when we do, to start to surface. But it's not like a light switch where you flip the switch and suddenly it's there. It's almost a resting into, and that word ruka, which is indicative of the elemental forces of God, are these powerful forces that we have access to in the breath. By making our home in the breath and relaxing our system, it almost replugs us in. It's the first step in replugging into the fullness of who we are. So I wanted to actually give you a chance to respond to that and then move into a prayer. A lot of people are dealing with some hard times right now. I've been pinged, multiple times, this week about some pretty serious, significant issues that people are facing. And so I want to move into a prayer after that. But anything you want to, kind of add or lay as a foundation before we go there?
Well, I think, Mark, you've said it, and what I was sharing is, together it helps give a good base understanding. But fundamentally, I find it to be the essential component that allows me to have a relationship with God that's personal and intimate. And if I don't have that, I can still, if I don't have an understanding of Ruka Takuchi, I can still have an intimate personal relationship with God. It doesn't mean I can't have that. But what it does is it enriches it. It's almost as if the language that I have learned, called English, that I speak in, is limited in its ability to resonate and trigger my understanding and my experience of God. And so it's almost like putting the Creator in a box. And what Ruka Takucha does, by having that as an active part of my consciousness, it activates the love filters in my mind and allows the love to be fully present in my body. And when that happens, now I'm in direct communion with and in relationship with Creator. And I don't think there's anything more important than that, because if I'm not in that state, then I'm making a mess. Real simple. So the key is to be in that state all the time. And that's the trick, Mark. And that's where prayer comes in. That's where commitment comes in. That's where devotion comes in. That's where, eating well, taking care of our bodies, exercising, all of the things come into play after that. That's the first and foremost in my mind.
And do you find it gets easier over time as you've been practicing it? Does it become more automatic, or is it always kind of at a conscious?
It absolutely does, Mark. It becomes a natural experience that as I am spending more and more time in the experience of Ruka Takucha, or the holy breath, then that's the norm. And when I'm not, I go, uh-oh, something's not right. What's wrong here? And what do I need to do? And that is anything that it takes to get back in alignment with love and to be that expression.
And that is always the first step. The first step, obviously you have to have a mental willingness, but the first step is to move into the breath. And so we've seen in the world, a lot of energy put into teaching, breath work. We're familiar with some that pretty intense, some's pretty relaxing, but there's a lot of different breath opportunities. And I wouldn't be prescriptive in saying, well, this is the right way. Because one of the things that I learned through my own practice is that the key is to be conscious in it, is to recognize, like, oh, I'm feeling tension. I'm going to breathe before I take an action. My thoughts are a little off. So I'm going to breathe and allow my thoughts to kind of come back into center. And so there's a real willingness that's required. And with the willingness and the recognition of the value of it, that's where, because if, I think a lot of people poo-poo it, frankly. It's like, come on, move into the breath. But I might have been one of those people before, and we've all heard a parent in the store or something like, hey, take a breath, to a kid who might be struggling. And it's almost got a connotation to it that can be negative, or almost like, oh, I'm doing something wrong, so now I have to take a breath, if you were raised in that way. But the truth is the reason that your parent might have said that wasn't to, condemn or to say that you're doing anything bad. It was actually to allow for you to have the gift of peace. And so I remember that when we make our home in the breath, we have access to levels of insight and intelligence that are unavailable otherwise. If someone's hunkered down and they're holding their breath, I mean, they're cutting off their faculties of intelligences and limiting their scope of opportunity. And one of the things that we see if you look at most Western Bibles, it's the first Beatitudes: "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." It's like, well, what's that? What do they get? What's that promise? The promise is, if you make your home in the breath, if you empty yourself and allow yourself to kind of move into that space, then you start to access and connect with the divine. You start to receive what is in the ethers, if you will, beyond our physical experiences, and bring that heavenly consciousness into this moment. And that's where wisdom is going to start to break through. So it's really critical to re-emphasize, for us as human beings, that, hey, it starts with the basics, right? And in anything, if we go back to the basics, if we go back to the foundation, we can start to build on that. And what I heard you saying is, as you build on it, and I found the same thing, as you build on it, it becomes more and more automatic, where suddenly an involuntary breath can come up because our systems are so trained that, oh, stress is coming, rather than hiding, running, shutting down. We need to get the breath active, because we're aware of how powerful the breath is in our life, and we cherish that. And in that cherishing the possibility of moving into a more peaceful state, our system becomes reinforcing automatically, and that automatic decision system is actually working on our behalf.
Well, it's so interesting, Mark. And one of the best examples I can find of that is watch an infant and a young child when they're real young. What they do is they naturally do that. And when they're injured, they might go, and then, and then they'll breathe, right? But initially they might do that. And that's that fight or flight. And it's a conditioned response. And if a child isn't taught that how they're doing it naturally and organically is wrong or right, and they're encouraged to allow their own guidance to happen, and they will be guided to breathe. It's a natural function. They're inspired from internal. We all are. And so you're right on. When we try to make it be what we want it to be, we're back to that box again. And the box can be with a tremendous amount of knowledge and information and insight with a lot of things that we've learned, but it's limited. Whereas when we're fully open to the divine, it's unlimited. And I think that's really the key.
And I'm going to invite us, and you and I will both do this, and we didn't practice or rehearse. This is an opportunity to just open up and allow for anyone who might be watching this an experience of how to do this. And so I want to bring us to the prayer part. And if you have something, if you're watching, if you have something that's been a struggle, maybe you're dealing with a relationship challenge, or you're dealing with something that is going on at work, or, a hope that you had isn't quite, manifesting as quickly as you had expected. Maybe you're being turned into, something more extraordinary, and it doesn't feel very comfortable right now. And it might not even be very clear right now. And so as that happens, and even as I start resonating some of these things in your brain and you're listening to this, you might feel a little tension, because if you think of something that's off or not quite the way you'd like to have it, you might sense that your breath starts to go a little bit more shallow. And, there are people that will actually shut down their breath and hold it. And if that's you, all you have to do is open your eyes, take a nice conscious breath, just consciously inhale and exhale. And so we'll do that first, just together. Just breathe for a moment. Just nice inhale. And as you exhale, just let your shoulders drop. Relax a bit. So I want to have an opportunity, to breathe into a situation. And so if you have a specific situation, just think about that, have it coming up in your mind. If you have a picture of it, look at the picture, or of a person. You could draw a picture, you could write a word. One of the things that I recognize is it's different for everybody. You might have a cross or a totem or something that you're holding on to. But what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, God, and I encourage you to just be with this. Hey, God, whoever's watching this, I pray that the love of you comes into their life. And as they consciously take their next breath, may the love of the Lord refresh their soul. And the clarity that could be available to them as they take this next breath come forward on a given situation that they might be dealing with. So be quiet for a moment and breathe as you allow for that space of whatever you've been thinking about to open up and let the heavens come in on that situation. So Rex, I don't know if you had anything, that shot up for you in terms of something you were working with, or an aha that you had as you rested in the breath. I know I did. I'm happy to share, but wanted to give you a little space if you wanted to.
Mostly that as we're sitting here, I have my window open in my office. And just when you started discussing that, a nice cool breeze came through the window, and I could feel it. It for me, when I'm really feeling connected and at one in the breath and with God, the wind is a part of that, and it actually just feels like it's moving through me and offering healing. As interesting as that sounds, that's what came up for me in the moment when I connected my breath and you were guiding that, and that conscious intention of breathing love and feeling that. The breeze is just continuing. And what I've noticed is that when I acknowledge and am a witness to the active force of Rukkadakucha, then it magnifies. So that's kind of what I experienced, Mark. Thanks for asking.
And to reinforce Rukkadakucha, as we know it in English is the Holy Spirit, is how it's been translated. But there's a lot of depth to that. That if you look at the Aramaic, that's beyond just what a lot of people understand the Holy Spirit to be. But it is really a beautiful reference. But just in case someone's tuning in later, I want to make sure that that's
right on. Yeah, it's always good to remember that and remind you. It's many meanings to the term and the active force called Ruka. And so one of them is the Holy Breath, and one of them is the Holy Spirit. And it's a good to interchange them and allow them to be used in both ways, because they can have a different understanding from either way.
Well, one of the areas that came up for me as I was kind of relaxing, breathing, and just thinking about a situation that I was dealing with a little bit earlier today, and it had to do with a topic that I started having a little bit of tension on, and as I just brought my attention back to it and brought more of the breath into that space, I just saw the budding of a relationship. It was like, oh, this is it was something unrelated to what we're doing here, but this was a new relationship, and it's early, and I'm feeling really good about it. But I was feeling a little bit of tension earlier, and so that tension just fell away. So that allows for me to come into a different context of how to think about it. And it's just that subtle shift in thinking, could be really, really extraordinary. You and I have had it many, many times, but it requires that we allow for our thinking to change, allow for new insight to kind of come through. And I will often, in that breath, I'll see an image, or a thought will come. I often do journal, and I'll have words just pour through. If I'm in a coaching session, or you do a lot of coaching as well, in a coaching session, sometimes just pausing and taking that breath, it provides the space to create the next prompt, to take a client to a place where it's going to be really highly valuable for them. And so whatever your relationship with was it, if you tried it just for the first time today consciously, if you've had a lot of experience with this, it's the first base point, and it just does a lot of good for us to retrain our brain to automatically go to the breath and automatically lean in on these active forces of God that are accessible to us, and allow for them to be in alignment with our system and realign our system. One of the things that I found over time is we get readjusted, in our thinking, in our emotions, possibly even in our physical structure. There can be lots of different ways that that the God will realign us, only if we're willing. Right? If we if we hang really tight to something, that creates an unwillingness. It's a resistance. We want to allow for that resistance to go, and making home in the breath is a beautiful way to do that. So I encourage everybody to remember that. And I'll give you the last word before we wrap up here, Rex. But one of the biggest things about this is it's a practice. It's a practice. Just doing this one time and saying, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, I get it. The breath, it's important. It's like, no, it's important to retrain your system so that you automatically have the breath at any given moment, even in the most stressful situations.
And I think what can inspire you and motivate you to do that, Mark's just explaining, is imagine you have at your fingertips a specific tool that was given to you by the Creator that is the breath. And it can undo the errors of anything that you think in a negative realm or any area that you have challenge with. It undoes those errors. Not only that, imagine it is what is teaching you the truth, regardless of what you think the truth is. And when you're open and receptive and willing to experience the truth, it will always come to you. And the breath is a powerful way to access that. And just to reiterate what Mark's saying, every night I'll connect my breath and breathe, inhale and exhale, every night. And I breathe myself to sleep. If I ever wake up in the middle of the night, I connect my breath. I start breathing. And throughout my day, I find myself, we have all kinds of stressors and triggers that happen. And I find that if I do the breathing, I find that it just softens whatever it is that I'm dealing with, whether it be physical pain in my body or injuries or, emotional upsets. It doesn't matter what it is. So if you choose, making your home in the breath can be amazing and so powerfully gifting to you by God. It's just an amazing tool. Amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe, so you can get notified. We're early on in the whole live thing. Last week was the first live ever that I did solo. And now I'm so blessed to have you here with me, Rex.
Thank you.
And one of the things that we'll continue to do is we're going to find topics that are of interest. We're going to take things from the headlines that might be out there and talk about it. And hopefully you'll be able to join me frequently. It'd be great to continue having you as part of this in some capacity, Rex. I'm glad that your willingness is always so high. And so as you tune in, you'll out there, you're going to meet other people. We might grow this team a little bit, and you know what, I'm putting it into God's hands and trust week by week. Today, it was just a blessing that we've got StreamYard working with YouTube and got the capacity to work this, because about 4 minutes before we went on, it wasn't working. So we got that one down.
Awesome.
That'll be easier for next time. Thanks all, and many blessings. Bye-bye.
Blessings, everyone.